So, but if you pull it off.
Because but you did have surgery.
No, I never had surgery. No, I decided not to. I went against.
Check one, check.
Joe, I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. You have designed a life that is giving to others, and you built a business along the way. So I'm really interested in not only the science and the art of your science, but also how you've designed your life. I think both are fascinating to me. But I would like to start with the science of it.
Yeah.
And you opened up your book, Supernatural, this idea that I need to share. I need to tell what I've been doing or what I've seen or what I've experienced, even at the risk of people thinking that I'm a wild one, dangerous, a quack, I'm on the fringe, and this likely is not going to be accepted. You didn't use any of those words,
Sure.
But that was the risk that you decided to take.
Thank you for the question. First of all, I never planned on doing any of this, to be really straight and really honest. I had my own personal injury. I got run over by a truck in a triathlon, broke 6 vertebrae in my spine. Typical surgery is Harrington rod surgery. I was young, I was in my 20s, I was athletic, I had a martial arts studio, I had a yoga studio, I was training for a lot of different races, and I went from 100 miles an hour to face down and in trouble. And I couldn't imagine living my life on addictive medications with Harrington rods from the base of my neck to the base of my spine. It was a full, six compression fractures is a lot. So I had bone fragments on the cord, and I had the neural arch broken, so I was in a lot of trouble. So I figured I might as well see if my mind can influence my body.
This was at age 20-something.
24, yeah. And it worked. It really worked for me. And when you go through that kind of initiation, you can't go back to business as usual. And it was a dark night of the soul for me during that time because I couldn't get my mind to do what I wanted it to do. Because I think when you're faced with crisis like that, we always focus on what we don't want to have happen instead of what we do want to have happen. So turning that battleship around for me as a 24-year-old kid was an enormous effort because I couldn't keep my mind on the task. So when I finally was able to get back on my feet and return back to my life, I decided from that point that it would be good to study other people that may have had a spontaneous remission from disease were treating conventionally or unconventionally. They were staying the same and getting worse, and all of a sudden they were getting better. So I traveled around the world. I traveled to 17 different countries, interviewed a lot of people.
At age 28 now?
I was probably 20, let's see, I was probably 29. Yeah.
Okay, so 2 things. You said it worked.
Yeah.
So I do want to understand what worked and how it worked. So I know we'll unfold that as we go, but in a shorthand for the listener who's unfamiliar with this part of your journey.
Yeah, so I wanted to see if my mind could influence my body. And I decided 2 things. I thought, God, there's an innate intelligence within us that's giving us life. It's keeping our heart beating, digesting our food, all the way down to the cellular level, organizing trillions of functions in a cell every second, correcting for mutations in the DNA. So I had a respect for that innate intelligence. And I thought, well, it can heal to a certain point.
And it does.
And it does.
It is healing.
But
it's trying its very best.
Yeah, with 6 compression fractures, I thought, this has got to be next level now. This has got to be next level. This. So I had to weigh what I knew against what I didn't know. Well, and so for me, I thought, God, if I could make contact with this intelligence and give it a plan, give it a directive, give it some orders, give it a template, and if I could do it really well, once I've had that vision in my mind super clear, I know that I can't heal it. I'm going to surrender that vision to a greater mind and see if it could begin to work with me.
So you sound like a mystic. You sound like a spiritualist at this point, somebody who's a devotee to a religion that says, I'm going to turn over my injury to God. I'm going to turn over my life experiences to God.
Yeah, I think that's a simplistic version because what I wanted to do is I wanted to influence it and see if I could take it to the next level. Because I knew that, the compression fractures could heal, but I would lose bone height. I still have fragments on my cord. I had motor function problems. I had sensory function problems. I had an enormous amount of pain. So this was kind of next level for me. And I think anytime you go against convention, whether it's social convention, scientific convention, religious convention, anytime you go against the current belief systems, you're always considered foolhardy or insane, right? I mean, you're nuts. The 4 opinions I had from 4 surgeons, they all thought I hit my head. Like they were like, what are you thinking here?
Yeah.
So, but if you pull it off.
Because you did have surgery.
No, I never had surgery. No, I decided not to. I went against.
That's where the medical institution would say, what are you doing?
Yeah, they were very upset with me. In 1986, you didn't do that. Like I was living in San Diego, you just didn't do that. And I just figured, God, if I have the Harrington rod surgery, I'm not going to be the same guy. I won't be able to do. I won't be able to do anything like I was doing. And so I was willing to trust in that process. I figured if it didn't work, I'm going to wind up with surgery anyway, so I might as well roll the dice. And so number 1 was make contact with that intelligence. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not doing anything. I'm laying face down. And the second thing was I'm not going to let any thought slip by my awareness unnoticed by me. So mystical means unknown. That's what the word means. So I was willing to trust if this could work. Now, a little background. I had studied hypnosis a lot. I saw the power of the subconscious mind. I saw, amazing things. And then I did have this kind of crazy moment where I was leaving for graduate school and my best friend's father gave me a book, Autobiography of a Yogi, and I was reading this book and I was like, God, if that is actually the truth, then I'm unaware of a lot.
Yeah.
And I read that book and scrutinized it and threw it across the room and wrestled with it. But I had this kind of idea that I was willing to take that risk because I had the time. I went from 100 miles an hour in my life to laying face down. So I knew enough about the spine, I knew enough about the body, and the first 6.5 weeks was misery. It was really, really a dark night of the soul because I could not. I was wrestling with my own belief, and my own self-doubt, and my inability to be able to control my mind when you're out of balance. So the first 6.5 weeks, it took me 3 hours to go through that inward process, and then when I was done, I wasn't satisfied. But after that 6.5 weeks, what took me 3 hours, 3.5, sometimes 4 hours to do, because it's the moment I started thinking, should I sell my practice? Should I sell my home? I'm going to be living in a wheelchair. It was the moment I was, my mind left the present moment, and I went off that. I start all over again. I'd start over, so it was a very, very deliberate but very, very difficult process, because if you get frustrated, it's going to get worse. So I had to move through all this muck, and 6.5 weeks, all of a sudden something clicked. It was like I hit a golf ball right in the sweet spot. I hit a tennis ball just right. Something clicked for me, and then all of a sudden from that point forward, it got easier. And what took me 3.5 hours, 3 hours to do, I was doing in much less time. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was really mastering the ability to pay attention and to be present. Because every time you catch yourself defaulting and you're going unconscious, the only way you become conscious is you catch yourself going unconscious and you become conscious again. And
That's the moment to celebrate.
Right. And most people say, well, I can't do it. And I was doing that, but really that's a victory.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that's the only way
Yes.
that you're actually going to stop yourself from going unconscious. So I was pruning connections and I was rewiring new connections, and I started developing kind of a new mind. And at that moment, Michael, I noticed like the dramatic reduction in my pain. And I was getting sensory feeling back and motor, and then my toes, and I was just like, okay, whatever you're doing is working, so keep doing it. And your belief at that point goes from here to here. Right? It just catapults because you're seeing the effect of you it cause, right? I hate my job. The other thing was that they, in their inward process of really deciding who they no longer wanted to be, like if I really could live my life again and live again, how would I live differently? So for me, I was back on my feet in 10 and a half weeks. They wanted to put me in this huge body cast. I was better, I was done. So I couldn't go back to business as usual because I was initiated. I have a very scientific mind, so I just kind of sold everything and left and went to the Northwest and started over again. And I wanted to take some time for myself and ask the big questions. If that truly happened, how did that happen? And is there anybody else has that happened to anybody else? So I had to start studying epigenetics and neuroplasticity and psychoneuroimmunology and electromagnetism, quantum physics, and it just was this kind of exploration for me. And I started getting closer to the understanding. And then when I started interviewing people that had spontaneous remissions from diseases that were treating conventionally or unconventionally, staying the same, and all of a sudden got better. Once I studied and found the commonalities amongst these people, and it was really about the mind. It was really about breaking the habit of being themselves, their old self, and reinventing a new self. The other thing was that they, in their inward process of really deciding who they no longer wanted to be, like if I really could live my life again, and live again, how would I live differently? Do I really want to be an attorney? I hate my job. I don't want to be an attorney, I want to be an artist, right? So you see these people make the transition by choice to stop being one person and start being another person. And in their inward process of thinking about how they do want to think, how they do want to act, how they do want to feel in their new life, they had long moments where they lost track of space and time. Their inward experience became more real than their outer experience. And it caused me to spend a lot of time studying the frontal lobe, which is kind of the workshop of the brain. That's where we focus, where we have intention. So we have attentions, where we have free will. We restrain our behaviors,
Judgment,
we
reason.
invent, we speculate. It's the creative center, right? And then fourth thing was that they believed there was an intelligence that was giving them life that they would trust and surrender to.
What does that mean? Let's just stay on that idea for a minute. And intelligence, because you've mentioned a few times like making contact with intelligence.
Well, whatever that consciousness is that's giving us life, that's within us, that's happening I'll say it scientifically, the autonomic nervous system, the limbic brain, right, is the seat of all of those biological functions that keeps us in homeostasis and balance, right? The neocortex, the thinking brain, is the analytical mind, and a lot of times that's what kind of gets us in trouble, right? So they had a belief, and independent of religion, that there was some intelligence that was giving them life that could help them in their healing process. Now, there was a spectrum involved in that, but the similarity was that it was within them.
So the intelligence is within.
Within.
So for somebody who might be a spiritualist or follow Christian doctrine, God is within.
Yes, if that is the word a person would want to use, yeah. So there came a period of time where I was in a documentary, and the documentary became really popular, and people started asking, well, how do you do it? Like, And I think this is a time in history where it's not enough to know. I think it's a time in history to know how, right?
Correct.
So I thought, okay, I studied all these things, went back to school and studied neuroscience and just got really into it. And then I was like, okay, if it worked on these sick people, let's see if we can reproduce an outcome. And so for the first couple of years, we didn't really see much. I was doing these 1-day courses and 2-day courses, and people were feeling better at the end of the weekend, but no real big changes. Then all of a sudden, it just started happening. We started seeing the most amazing changes in people's health that really challenged my belief. And so when we started seeing people have remissions from very serious stage 4 cancers and Parkinson's disease and MS and ALS and spinal cord injuries and all kinds of crazy things, that's when I knew it was time to measure. And so we organized a group of scientists, and now I work with University of California, San Diego. And so when I started seeing the outcomes, Michael, and they were unbelievable. They were literally unbelievable to me. Like, I was shaking my head, like, I cannot believe what I'm seeing. And I knew that when a person has an inward experience where they're in a certain health condition, and then after we use meditation as, and we'll talk about that, demystifying meditation in a way that allows a person to learn how to make an inward experience really, really real. And so I knew that when a person got up out of a wheelchair with MS, right in front of me, like something was happening in there. Something was happening inside of them that was very profound and very real, right? And it was an experience, right? So we organized, we've got over 20,000 brain scans. We have fMRI scans. We've measured thousands and thousands of HRV measurements. We've measured gene expression. We've measured microbiome. We've measured 2,882 metabolites in blood. We've measured immune regulation. We've measured tears. We've measured breast milk. We've measured everything you can possibly imagine. And the idea is, what happens when a person completely immerses themselves in a community that's interested in change and transformation? And that's what we teach. We teach the process of change. We use meditation not to heal. We use meditation to change. And when you change, you heal, right? So the science has been so compelling because you can't call it pseudoscience anymore. The data is so profound that it shows that, as an example, the studies that we've done demonstrate that the human nervous system manufactures a pharmacy of chemicals that works sometimes better than any drug, and it's within you, right?
Interleukin,
all kinds of amazing things.
Yeah.
And is it possible then to upregulate genes for health and downregulate the genes for disease? And if you teach people in a very simple way the philosophy, the theory, the information, the knowledge, and they can learn that information. Learning is making new connections in the brain, as you know, but the research also shows that if you don't review it, if you don't repeat it, if you don't think about it over and over again, those circuits prune apart within hours or days. So we set up these large events with thousands of people from all over the world, and the information is so tantamount for them because it's what they're going to do with it. They got to do something with it. So when they learn the information, then they have to teach it back to the person next to them. They have to be able to explain it. And if they can't explain it, it's not wired in their brain. So as they remind themselves what they learned, they're reproducing that same level of mind. And nerve cells that fire together wire together. And the more you understand what you're doing, and the more you understand why you're doing it, the how gets easier, because you can assign meaning to the task. And when you assign meaning to the task, you turn on that prefrontal cortex and it wants an outcome, right? So they're installing the neurological hardware in their brain in preparation for the event. So if you can set up the conditions in the environment and give people the proper instructions, and they get their behaviors to match their intentions, their actions equal to their thoughts, they get their mind and body working together and initiate that knowledge, they should have an experience, right? And the experience then enriches the circuitry in the brain But the end product of the experience is called an emotion. And then when you feel unlimited, or you feel grateful, or you feel empowered, now you're teaching your body chemically to understand what your mind has intellectually understood. So the information is no longer in the brain, now the information's in the body, right? So the person's embodying the truth of that philosophy. So this is kind of the journey, what we do. So then we're measuring what's taking place inwardly. Now, if you can go for 7 days and keep reproducing the experience, neurologically and neurochemically, you're conditioning the mind and body to begin to work as one. And when the body now knows how to do it better than the mind, now it's, implicit, it's innate, it's automatic, it's easy, it's familiar. We've become that knowledge, right? And so the person's in a different state of being. So we have to go from philosopher to initiate to master, from knowledge to experience to wisdom, from mind to body to soul, from the thinking to doing to being, learning with your head, applying with your hands, knowing it by heart. And we discovered that it's the overcoming process that is the becoming process, because 95% of who we are, by the time we're in the middle of our life, are a set of memorized, hardwired attitudes, beliefs, and perceptions, the automatic and unconscious habits and behaviors and reflexive emotional responses. So it's that unlearning process, that 95% of being unconscious, getting conscious. And if a person's able to do that, if they're able to reconstruct and reinvent a new way of thinking, a new way of behaving, a new way of feeling, will it be reflected in their biology? And we've discovered that the majority of people that go through a week-long event, it's not like a small percentage. There's a community effect that's taking place.
I think the reason people change is because of pain. And I don't think it comes from inspiration. I think it comes from a position that I am sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that's pulled right out of an AA, pamphlet somewhere. But when there's enough pain that a person feels that they say, it's got to be different. I can do different. That there's a better way. Can you help? Or can I go inward and figure out a better way? I don't think we do anything alone. So I think that you're onto something really powerful about doing it together. But this idea that people are in change, that people change because of pain, I don't know if you agree with it or not.
I do. I think when we're brought to our lowest denominator, whether it's crisis, disease, diagnosis, loss, betrayal, it doesn't matter. You reach this lowest denominator where nothing is making that feeling go away. No vacation, no TV show, no friend, where that feeling is
the alcohol,
constant.
the drugs, the numbing,
the drugs,
it's
the
not
alcohol,
working anymore.
Nothing is making that feeling go away. And I think this is a really important moment for people, because they don't feel like themselves. Nothing in their environment, in their outer world, is making this feeling go away. And this is where they start, for the first time, observing themselves, that idea of metacognition. They feel so different than the way they normally feel that they can view themselves through the eyes of someone else. This is the moment where they can all of a sudden go, oh my God, look at the way you've been thinking. You've been saying, I can't, it's too hard, I hate this person. Those thoughts have consequences. You can say, oh my God, you've been complaining, blaming, you've been a victim, you've been judging, making excuses, feeling sorry for yourself. Oh my God, look at you. Like it's the lighting the match in the dark place. And then you can say, oh my God, I live the majority of my life in hatred and anger and fear. Oh my God, that's not loving to me. But no one is going to you're not going to listen to anybody when they tell you that. You're going to bump them off, right? But this is kind of on the soul, kind of give you a little nudge, like this is your moment, right? And
you're doing this by helping them observe themselves, but more specifically, helping them observe the intimate thoughts that they're having in said moment.
Yeah, or
the emotional experience.
Yeah, so I'm curious. We see that the brain changes the most when you get beyond I can't, I'm too tired, I don't feel like it, I want to quit, this is too hard, I'll never make it. When you get beyond, like people who are curious, what's on the other side of that thought? They're stepping into the unknown. Mm-hmm. The person who says, oh my God, I want to be happy, why am I spending the majority of my day complaining? But complaining is not going to make me happy, it's going to make me unhappy. And then, oh my God, this emotion that I live by every day, Emotions are just a chemical record of the past, right? So if I'm living...
What does that mean, a chemical record of the past? Because I have emotions in the present moment.
Yeah, you can. All I'm saying is when a person's... let's pick an emotion.
Frustration.
Frustration.
Pretty
Frustration is a great one. A person feels frustration because of an experience that happens or has a series of experiences that happen in their life. The stronger the emotion that we have to some experience in our life, the more altered we are inside of us. The disruption in our chemical continuity causes the brain to freeze a frame and take a snapshot or a series of snapshots, and that's called the long-term memory. So that the memory is embossed in the brain, right? And the chemical
If
that's
this
created,
thing happens again,
yeah,
something like this happens
yeah,
again.
Yeah. So if it happens a few times, and then you review the event, you keep remembering the event, you're producing the same chemistry in the brain and body as if the event was occurring. And the body's so objective, it's the unconscious mind, that it does not know the difference between the real life experience that's creating that emotion and the emotion that person's fabricating by memory alone. To the body, it's exactly the same. So the body's reliving the trauma 50 to 100 times a day. So it's a thought and a feeling, it's an image and an emotion, or a memory and emotion. It's a stimulus and response, and you're conditioning the body become the mind of that emotion. And so now the body, the servant, is now the master. So the body has learned it, and it's automatic. And so you're sweeping your environment just to look for something to actually cause you to feel frustrated. So the hormones of stress become highly addictive. And why are you this way? And they'll say, I am this way because of these events that have happened to me 10 years ago. What they're really saying is, I had an event that's changed me biologically, and I have not been able to change since. And it's entirely possible that people use the problems and conditions in their life to reaffirm their addiction to frustration, to reaffirm their addiction to that emotion. So they don't know they're doing that consciously, but they're becoming addicted to the life they don't even like.
I have a quote here that I wrote down. I wanted to play back to you and talk about it, which you just said it. People are emotionally addicted to a life they don't want. I'm loosely paraphrasing, but that idea, when I read that in your writings, I thought, you're really onto something important. And so I think what you're suggesting is that if the mind and brain, not really separate, but let's separate them for a moment. The brain is the hardware and the mind is the software. It breaks down quickly. But if they're doing their job, they're trying to keep you alive. They're sweeping the environment, to your language, scanning for all the reasons that a threat could disrupt or end their life. And so I think what you're saying in this idea is that that alertness, there's a chemistry that is pretty addicting to that.
Yeah.
It feels good. It's a beta brainwave.
It's essential for survival.
And you're saying we like that so much that we'll just keep scanning to find the dangers, to find the reasons that things could go wrong, reasons I should be frustrated. And then because of that, I'm now exhausted. I'm now poisoning my system.
Yeah, so let's just talk about that. Let's unpack that a little bit, because I think
I saw the corners of your eyes light up when I said that.
Well, because living in stress is living in survival, right? And stress is when your brain and body are knocked out of homeostasis. Stress response is what the body innately does to return itself back to order, okay? Well, all biological organisms can tolerate short-term stress. A zebra gets chased by the lion, it outruns the lion, it goes back to grazing and eating, and it goes back into balance, right? So all organisms can do that. You get cut off on the freeway, you jam on the brakes, and then you're over it, right? For most people. But when you turn on the stress response and you can't turn it off, now you're headed for disease, because no organism can live in emergency mode for that extended period of time. Now, human beings, because of the size of the frontal lobe, we can turn on the stress response just by thought alone. That's the problem. Now,
that's the trick.
Yeah. So if you're forecasting some future worst case scenario based on the past, and you're actually imagining that future unfolding, your body as the objective mind begins to feel the emotion of that future before it happens. And now you're conditioning your body to become the mind of anxiety, the mind of fear, right? And again, thought and a feeling, image, emotion, stimulus, response. The body's being conditioned into fear. Okay, so now you say to that person, why are you this way? And they'll say, I am this way because of these events that have happened to me 10 years ago. What they're really saying is, I had an event that's changed me biologically, and I have not been able to change since. Okay, so if you can turn on the stress response just by thought alone, and those chemicals, those hormones of stress are addictive, the arousal, you can become addicted to your own thoughts, and this is why it's hard to change. Well, if the long-term effects of the hormones of stress push the genetic buttons and create disease, that's a fact, and you can turn on the stress response just by thought alone, your thoughts can make you sick. All right, no, that's the ultimate mind-body connection. So when you tell a person that and they go, oh my God, you ask them, if your thoughts can make you sick, is it possible that your thoughts can make you well? And so we did a study where we just took people and we said, trade frustration, trade impatience, trade resentment for a heart-centered emotion. Let's hook you up to an HRV and let's have you practice. Get really good at feeling appreciation, gratitude, kindness, care. Let's get you in that state. Is it possible then that you can upregulate the proteins for your immune system and downregulate the secretion of cortisol? And the amount of immunoglobulin A, which is a really important, natural flu shot for the body, went up 50% in the participants. So the body actually is believing it's living in an environment that's nurturing, right? And so it could be that immediate. Now,
this is a loving kindness meditation or a heart-centered
meditation. Yeah. 15 minutes. 15 minutes a day, twice a day or 3 times a day for 3 days. That's it. That's how fast it can happen. Now, the caveat behind this is that just like breaking any addiction, you're going to go through a lot of withdrawals because the body's going to be craving the chemical, right? So we've discovered, again, when the person is sitting in a meditation and they're coming up against their frustration, they're coming up against their resentment, they're coming up against their impatience, instead of saying, I can't meditate, I'm too busy, I'm getting on my cell phone, I have too many things to do. Nobody else in the herd or the flock or the tribe, just everybody's sitting, right? So the person, we're not asking them to white knuckle it, we're giving them something to do. We're teaching them how to lower the volume to that emotion, settle the body back down as the mind, and teach them what to do with that. So the act of doing that, breaking that, the inhibition process, breaking the stimulus and response, the body's craving 20 years or 10 years of frustration.
More stimulus. Yeah,
more stimulus. So what it does is it starts to send images to the brain like, think of the time in your life, and it's trying to reproduce that chemical. So this takes an enormous amount of energy, an enormous amount of awareness to be able to free the body from the chains of the past. And yet, once you learn how to do it, it's tedious in the beginning. If the person truly can get beyond their addiction to that emotion, the absence of that emotional addiction is called joy. The body's no longer tormented. So the side effect...
That's interesting framing, that the absence...
Yeah, the side effect of that is there's a complete change in the body's physiology.
So would you say is your position that is our default?
I think it's one of the major defaults.
Joy.
No, I think the default to frustration is automatic, right? You just need to see a person or a circumstance, have a thought, and seamlessly you're feeling the emotion from your past, and you're behaving like you're in your past, and you're believing everything that goes along with your past.
What is the natural state of the human? Is it joy, or is there a natural state that you say, no, it's not? It's not like there's a default to happiness or joy or peace. It's not that simple, but we can cultivate specific actions and thought patterns to increase the amount of joy.
I think the majority of time, people are on alert. They're in high beta brainwave states. They're vigilant. They're ready. When we're living in stress and we're living in survival, all of our attention is on our environment. That's where the danger is. All of our attention is on our body because we're getting the rush of chemistry and adrenaline, and all of our attention is on time. How much time is we got to make this go away, right? And so when you break free from the state of survival, which pretty much is about 70% of the time for most people.
So is the world dangerous and hostile, or is it safe for you?
For me?
Mm-hmm. It's like a fundamental decision to make. The world is either dangerous or safe.
Yeah, for the most part, I feel like it's a safe place. I think when you're living in survival, I think you'll always perceive it as a dangerous place.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the opposite side of that, and this is kind of what we've discovered, I think when you live in something other than survival, you live in a state of creation. And I think a state of creation is when energy naturally moves into the heart, and the heart is the creative center. When you're living in stress and you're living in survival, your brain is completely incoherent because you're trying to control and predict everyone and everything in your life. So stress is created by the loss of control, the perception that something's going to get worse or something that you can't predict, right? So the alarm system switches on. So the next thing you start doing is you try to control and predict everything in your life. Well, every person, every object, everything, every place is mapped neurologically in your brain. You've got a neurological network for your wife, for your husband, for your kids, for your dog, for where you live, where you work, your phone, So as we shift our attention to each one of these different elements, like a lightning storm in the clouds, in that aroused high beta state, the different compartments of the brain begin to modulate and they begin to fire out of order. If you measure that on the brain, it's waves that are out of order and they cancel each other out, and the brain is incoherent, we're incoherent. Same thing happens in the heart. You're stepping on the gas and you're stepping on the brake. You're on a Zoom meeting, someone's talking, and you're thinking about, oh my God, your emotional response is not the best. But you're not running, you're not fighting, you're not hiding, you're sitting there, right? So you're stepping on the gas and the brake, and the heart starts beating very, very much out of order, becomes very incoherent. Same thing, the energy in the heart goes down. You can't trust, it's not a time to communicate, you know the story. So we've discovered that where you place your attention is where you place your energy. So we teach people then, if you can place your attention on your heart, slow your breathing down, you slow your brain waves down. And teach them how to work with their body and convert from the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system and get their body in that state. It takes practice. It takes a lot of work. In the beginning, you're working with the animal, and the animal's juiced up and it's ready to go, and you got to teach it that the threat, the danger is over, and it's not very trusting in the beginning. So slow your breathing down, slow your brain waves down, convert over. Put your attention on your heart, and let's practice feeling some heart-centered, some elevated emotions. If a person can sustain that state, we'll see their heart get very coherent. When it gets coherent, energy builds, and if they can sustain it, something really beautiful happens. It's almost like the heart informs the brain that the trauma is over, and it resets the baseline for the past event where the emotion is attached to. And we've seen this numerous times. It tells the amygdala, it's over, like the trauma's over, and then all of a sudden, the body resets and the brain resets, and the person all of a sudden, like grabbing a big sheet and going like this, they go right out of beta, high beta, and they go right into alpha, coherent alpha. And the heart's telling the brain, get creative. The other thing we discovered, Mike, is that when you're pressed like that, we tend to overfocus. We tend to narrow our focus on the cause of the problem. Like any of us who have been under stress know that, for the most part, you're obsessing, you're ruminating, you're over-focused on something. And we discovered that when you do that, you actually make your brain worse 100% of the time, like because you're analyzing your life within that disturbing emotion. That emotion is a record of the past, and you're driving it into higher and higher beta, right? So we thought, oh my God, what if we do the opposite?
I'm completely a rookie in this part of the discussion.
I was really surprised.
Which is how the heart and the brain work together.
What if we go from this kind of narrow focus on everything physical, everything material, everything known, to broadening and opening our focus and putting it on nothing? In the act of sensing space, we discovered when you're sensing, you're not analyzing and you're not thinking. In the cortex is the analytical mind. So as you're sensing space and you're no longer analyzing and thinking, you're no longer activating those different neurological networks in the brain. And all of a sudden, your brain goes from beta to alpha, but not any kind of alpha. Those different compartments of the brain that have been modulated and compartmentalized, they begin to unify, they begin to synchronize. And what syncs in the brain links in the brain, right? And that's coherence. So now the brain starts getting more orderly and you start feeling more like yourself. So the breathing is a great way to get the body to convert from sympathetic to parasympathetic. But the open and the broadened focus and sensing nothing in space is actually what allows us to get beyond our analytical mind, and what separates our conscious mind from our subconscious mind is our analytical mind. Now you're opening the door and getting into the operating system where you can actually rewrite a program and rehearse a new script, right?
Which is your beliefs, is I think what you're suggesting.
Where all the hardwired beliefs, perceptions, attitudes, behaviors all exist.
So to be uber tactical, you're talking about an eyes open meditation where your periphery is engaged.
No, your eyes are closed.
So you're doing it eyes closed and you're watching the light show behind your eyes.
You're not watching any, you're focusing on absolutely nothing.
So the reason I was going to that is because it was a tactic I was using with cage fighters, UFC fighters, is that as a yin to their yang, we would do a meditation, eyes open meditation, which is actually really hard to do.
Yeah.
Eyes closed we're visual creatures. So it's when you close the eyes, a couple of things happen. One, your analytical, judgmental, critical mind can kick on pretty quickly, or you fall asleep. Right? And so what we're doing is eyes open and just having them like 3/4 of the way closed, I should say, and just engage their periphery. And as keeping it as wide, non-judgmental as they possibly can, but just noticing as opposed to the narrow, attentional hunting mode or survival mode of looking down the barrel of the gun or chasing something, in the wild, that narrow attention. So we would go from broad to narrow, and then stay broad as much as we can.
Yeah.
And that exercise, they would report quieting down their analytics because they're paying attention to space.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can do it with your eyes open as well.
Which I think is exponentially harder. I thought that's what you're going, but you're saying eyes closed.
So we do it both.
You do.
We do it both. But for the sake of this conversation, just by closing your eyes and focusing on nothing, you can slip past the analytical mind. And when you're in alpha, you know this, you tend to see more in images and pictures. You're more creative, right? And then you can train a person to actually know the different brainwave states. And my definition of theta is when your body's resting in a light sleep and you're awake. And that's when the door between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind is wide open. This is the most suggestible state of the brain. It's a hypnotic state. If a person can sit and practice this, we discovered that the formula is relaxed and awake. Relaxed, the more relaxed you get in your heart, the more energy goes to the brain. Now, this is where like I'm completely a rookie in this part of the discussion. I was really surprised. Which is how the heart and the brain work together. The heart and the mind. I was really surprised. I was so surprised in seeing this because I was always a brain guy until I saw like every time the heart gets coherent, it influences the brain. How do we measure heart coherence? We measure them with all kinds of devices. We use what's called a bodyguard. Some people wear them for 24 hours. We're looking at them when they're sleeping. We're looking at them when they're eating. We're looking at them when they're doing their meditations. We're looking at them when we're signing a specific act during a meditation to see if they're actually doing it. So we can say to them, you're doing it or you're not doing it.
So it's measuring the electrical activity
It's
of the heart?
measuring the electrical activity. It's actually measuring the pulse,
It's not heart rate variability.
There is an element of heart rate variability to heart coherence, absolutely.
So there'd be an increase in variability.
Yes.
And there would be a what from an electrical standpoint? I don't know what the other measures would be.
So the sensors are picking up electromagnetic signals.
Right.
The heart, when it gets coherent, produces a magnetic field. And that magnetic field can be up to 3 meters wide. It is like a drum. It gets very coherent and it produces a magnetic field, a very measurable magnetic field. So it informs the brain to be creative, and it causes a kind of a frequency or energy is carrying information. So there's an emission of energy that's released from the heart. If a person can get relaxed in their heart and awaken their brain, you can train a person to get really good at this. It gets really crazy because what takes place from coherence is another phase called resonance. And resonance is when the brain is in delta and at the same time in theta and at the same time in alpha and the same time in beta and high beta, and all of a sudden you have this very peak frequency called gamma, and that's super consciousness. So now the person is really relaxed in their heart, and instead of stressed out, unconscious, and programmed, somehow they tend to be way more conscious. So
this is the signature of aha, the signature of insight, the signature maybe of flow state as well.
it's another arousal. But instead of the arousal being fear,
That's right.
instead of the arousal being pain, instead of the arousal being aggression, the arousal is kind of like what you said. It's kind of like an ecstasy. It's kind of like a bliss. Like a person is like, this feels so good, I don't want to leave the moment. Like I want to stay right here. And what we want to do is get people to do that so well with their eyes closed that they can do it with their eyes open. And that's why we do walking meditations and things like that.
And so you've got a 7-day training. And then for somebody who doesn't have the ability to get to a location, whether I know you have one coming up in LA, can't get to California or whatever. What do you point them to increase?
Yeah, so we have a little course called The Formula.
Okay.
And it's like 30 minutes of content with 5 meditations, 12 different sessions. It's a great way to get the practice of heart coherence and brain coherence and then synchronize the two. And the 5 meditations are step by step. Work on the heart, work on the brain, work on the heart and the brain, and then take it to the next level. And then we have an online progressive workshop, like the same course we'll be doing in LA in January. You can watch it online and you can get, good 12, 14 hours of content, and you'll get 6 meditations and 4 hours of meditations, and you got a lot of tools to practice there. And it's a requirement for our community. In fact, I tell people, do not come to a week-long event. Do not come to a week-long event until you see the progressive workshop.
So do the online progressive workshop first.
They have to prepare.
Yeah.
Because we got bodies to heal, we got lives to change, we got futures to create. I mean, it was a very full week. I mean, I just finished one just this past week, and they're 6 in the morning till 7 or 7:30.
How many do you do?
We do about one a month. Yeah.
And the reason I don't talk about it, if all, is because it's like, are you fucking kidding me?
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Did the exact same thing. I went in there with a mortar.
It was 1995, and I had this radical injury. It was 2 spines, 2 vertebrae. One was an extrusion and one was an intrusion. So one popped in and one popped out. The one that popped out, they're pretty normal, right? But the one that popped in broke off.
So like a spondylolisthesis?
No, No, it was a cervical intrusion. So it was just the disc matter bulged inward, not outward.
Yeah.
So it bulged inward and then it pinched and it broke off. So I've got this disc matter floating around my spinal cord and pushing against my spinal cord, which is a problem.
Prolapse, yeah.
Yeah. Not pushing on the nerve, but pushing on the entire bundle.
Yeah.
And it was bad. It was really bad. And so 2 years where my wife was like, she would have had it with me because I couldn't even lift my laundry basket. And, she's like, you need to figure this out. Like, we can't keep going this way. And I didn't want surgery. And then the doc, he was great. He was, good ortho, spinal ortho. He's like, look, it's time. We've done everything. I cannot do any more here for you. It's time for surgery. And I said, can you give me 30 days? I was just wrapping up my master's degree, or just somewhere in that range, right towards the end of my master's. And I thought to myself, what am I doing? I'm not doing any performance imagery. I'm not using my mind in any way. And there was this fringe thing called healing imagery, not really well understood. And I read a couple articles about it, and I don't even think they were scientific journals. There was a couple articles about what is this thing called healing imagery, and they were studying cancer patients. Do you remember this original research or writings about it? Yeah. And they asked them, what did you do? Because there was, a control group and an experimental group, and the experimental group said, I don't know, the control group did nothing over the course of X number of weeks. And the experimental group said, well, you told me to do healing imagery, and there was this theme that emerged that there was like Mickey Mouse hands, or there was dump trucks, or there was the hands of God, and it was this white light. And there was these themes that no instructions were given to these folks to do healing, other than do healing imagery X number of minutes for X number of days. And they had better results in cancer than the control group. And so I thought, I need to do that. And I couldn't see it disappear. So I used that spiritual framing. It was Mickey Mouse hands, but they had the hands of God in there, the energy of God, if you will. And I could not see my intrusion go away. Now I'm blanking on am I getting the diagnosis right? Intrusion. Mm-hmm. I couldn't see it just disappear. I couldn't see it go away. So you can ask my wife, 17 minutes every night for about 30 days. I would see like a wet clay. I would see this matter of my disc be like wet clay, and these Mickey Mouse hands, fueled with this spiritual, you would call it this intelligent being or intelligence, take layers off it like clay, wet water on clay, and just take more off and more off and more off and more off until I could believe that over time it was reducing to a place that was non-existent. Probably like 45 days later, I had a second MRI. The doc pops the screen up. This is before there's still screens, not like the digital now.
View box.
It was a view box. Bang, he puts it up and he goes, Mike, I don't know what to tell you, but how you doing? And I said, I'm okay. Like nothing radically different. It's still kind of a burning between my shoulder blades. And he says, yeah, it looks like, I don't know, the body sometimes just eats up these things. And it looks like there's just a little bit of calcium that's built up there, but like it's gone. So, I don't know what I would go. We could go in and do some surgery and poke around and maybe clean some stuff out. I said, no, thank you. So back fully functioning very soon after that. I needed my mind to catch up with the image that I saw.
Yeah.
But my mind also was the one that allowed me to take these layers off every night. Yeah. And so I share that with you because if I ever in this conversation had more of like a tell me more, I really want to understand. I don't talk about this much. And the reason I don't talk about it, if all, is because it's like, are you fucking kidding me?
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Did the exact same thing. I went in there with a mortar. In my own convalescence from my injury, I did the exact same thing. Reconstructed every vertebrae, like with a mortar, like just make it all smooth. And I did, and if I was doing that and I was on, say, I broke T8, T9, T10, T11, T12, and L1. If I was on like T9 and I started thinking about, am I going to live in a wheelchair? I'd stop and start all over again because I was not.
That's exactly how I did it.
That I was not giving that intelligence. It is a consciousness that's giving us life, and I have to be present with it. I have to give it a very clear picture, and if it's polluted in any way, I would start all over. And I think the brain does not know the difference, really, at certain moments between what's real and what's imagining. And I think that, in effect, starts producing outcomes. So that's an example of truth. You're the example of truth. So when a person comes to our week-long retreat and they stand on the stage and they say, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and I had a doctor, so I tried the chemo, I tried the radiation, I tried the surgeries, I tried the diet, I tried the drug trials, I tried everything that wasn't changing because I wasn't changing. And then they say, I have no evidence of cancer. Like, it's a 4-minute-mile moment. It's like I'm looking at 2,000 people in an audience and everybody's leaning in because that is the example of truth up there. They're saying, I broke through a certain level of consciousness or unconsciousness, and the person in the audience invariably that has that similar condition sees that person, they don't look any more special than them, and their belief in possibility goes up. And I think people do the best with what they think is available. You got enough people together in the spirit of that, I think people become conscious of other possibilities. And just like an infection can spread amongst the community and create disease, health and wellness can become as infectious as disease in 7 days. So we did this study and we found out that we had all these people everybody had their own genotype, right? Their own particular gene expression based on their race, their culture, their family, whatever. And genes make proteins. And proteins are responsible for the structure and function of your body. The expression of proteins is the expression of life. At the end of 7 days, all these different genotypes, almost 80% of the collective were expressing the same genes and making the same proteins. Like, that's unheard of. So, like, people change people, but there was an emergent consciousness that was taking place, that was being reflected in people's biology. The herd, the flock, the tribe, the school of fish, everybody's evolving together in 7 days. So if you don't know that that's possible.
He said, Charlie, there's no cancer. There was nothing, was zero, absent.
That you could actually use imagery to heal some type of lesion, then you'll make the typical choice. But the fact that you do know that you have a hand in it, you could actually do something, I can do something to help my health. And it may not be in like a pill immediate. You got to put in the work. You got to put in the time, and you have to really understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. There can be no false hope.
Well, so this is why I didn't talk about it, because I didn't know exactly how it worked. And I didn't know. The medical professional said, oh, the body just ate it up. Maybe, sometimes it turns these things into a gas, and it just kind of, I thought, well, maybe, but I didn't tell him what I did. That was my information, but I didn't want to share it. One, because it was super fringe and it was way out there. I can get out there, and so I'm not too afraid of that. However, I didn't want to set up this condition in another person that I did it. Yeah. I'm pretty good at this. You could do it if you were just good enough, and then they go away and they're like, "Fuck, I still have cancer." I've still got, my back is still riddled. And I just felt like there was this unfair thing.
Yeah.
And so that's why I asked you about why you wanted to step forward, because I made a very different choice.
Yeah.
So why did you want to go down the research path? You could stay as a kind of a guru and have 12 of these a year, 2,000 folks, write some more books, and just have the honest experience that you're onto. And as soon as you're going down, I want to measure it.
When I saw people, like I saw that I was truly making a difference on some level in their life, that was the moment I didn't care. Like, I really didn't care about the academic who was sitting there judging me. He or she's gonna judge me anyway. I really don't care. Like, that's fine. I'm more interested in people who do want to learn. Those are the people that I'm after, right? So they can have their judgments about me and say all kinds of things, but I really don't care anymore. I really don't care. I know on some level, between the evidence that's taking place in human testimony, and there's enough, we have hundreds, if not thousands now, of people who have healed themselves, and we have amazing evidence in empirical scientific studies. Evidence is the loudest voice. And so chronic health conditions in themselves, just stay in the lane of convention, require a lifestyle change. And chronic health conditions make up 95% of all health conditions because of lifestyle, because of behaviors, because of choices. Okay, so a pharmaceutical may alleviate and give you some chemical balance. But if you're not physically balanced and you're not emotionally balanced, that's going to do very little. So teach a person then the structure of what it really means to change. People don't do the meditations in our work to heal. They do the meditations to change.
And what are you hoping that they change?
So it's just three things: the way they think, the way they act, and the way they feel. And how you think, how you act, and how you feel is called your personality. And your personality is intimately connected to your personal reality. So then let's unlearn the old personality that's 95% hardwired, conditioned, and habituated. And that's the hard work. That's the overcoming process. And then let's fire and wire new thoughts in our brain. What do I want to believe? A belief is just a thought I keep thinking over and over again. So let's, with intention, let's with attention, begin to install the hardware. Keep doing it. It becomes a software program. That's the new voice in your head. That's the new belief. I can. It's possible. That's my vision. Okay. A person who's healing from a health condition may have a good meditation in the morning, 45 minutes, hour, half hour, whatever, feel really in the zone. 12 minutes, feel really in the zone,
Yeah.
but then spends the rest of their day, frustrated, impatient, angry, suffering, fearful. Okay, so 1 hour.
It does not. It doesn't transmute.
It's not going to work. So let me mentally rehearse how I'm going to be in those circumstances. Now, you know this. The act of mental rehearsal. You close your eyes and you rehearse doing something, whether you're playing the piano or doing a sport or whatever. You know this extremely well. When you're truly present, the brain cannot distinguish between the actual event and what you're imagining. So what you're imagining becomes the experience, and the brain looks like you've been playing the piano for 5 days. It looks like you've been hitting a golf ball for the last week. The brain looks like you've already done it. Now, the brain's no longer a record of the past now. Now you're priming it as a map to the future. You're installing the hardware. Right. Keep doing it. You behave differently around your coworker. There's no magic here. You behave differently around your ex or whoever. You're changing, right? Now the changes be greater than your environment. To think, act, and feel differently in the same environment. Okay, now, can I stay in my heart? Can I feel an elevated emotion today? Let me just bring up the feeling I want to feel today, and let me bring it up 100 times so I can bring it up on my own, right? So the word meditation then means to become familiar with. That's what it means. To become so familiar, so conscious of your unconscious self that you don't default and go unconscious in your waking day. That is a great day. Muscular dystrophy, I mean, come on, like, there's no cure for muscular dystrophy. The kid came in a wheelchair and he's walking out of the event like I'm scratching my head like, how did that happen? It was happening in the limbic brain, the seat of the autonomic nervous system on fire. And then, okay, let me remind myself how I am going to think. Let me remind myself how I'm going to act at the staff meeting, how I'm going to act with my kids, how I'm going to act when I'm here. What would greatness look like? What would love do? Let me just rehearse it in my mind so I can get my behaviors to match my intention. Let me get really clear. Okay, no person, no circumstance, no condition in my life is going to move me from this elevated emotion. Now the game is on. You're out of the bleachers. You're on the playing field now, because the person who's truly interested in healing says, the moment I start feeling those familiar emotions, I'm signaling the same genes. And genes make proteins. It's the environment that signals the gene, okay? The end product from an experience in the environment is an emotion. So as long as I live by this emotion, I'm signaling the same genes. Okay, is it possible then, if I feel this elevated emotion and I'm able to sustain it, that I could actually, my body would believe it's living in a different environment? And if the environment signals the gene and the end product of an experience in the environment is an emotion, by me feeling this elevated emotion my entire day, I can signal genes ahead of the environment. What we discovered, if you have intention in that state, 100% of the people actually signal the gene to make a protein. 100%. That's pretty good odds it's going to happen.
What duration of time?
7 days.
Well, if you thin slice the amount of time they were doing intention work, call it mental rehearsal.
35 hours of meditation in a 7-day event.
Okay, 35 hours of meditation. And of that meditation, are you including mental rehearsal, mental imagery, intention? Is that included in the 35?
Yeah, it's a journey.
Yeah, so you're thin slicing. There are thin slices of different types of meditation you're talking about.
Yeah, so that's one type of meditation. We do all kinds. We create brain and heart coherence. That's essential.
Yeah.
When we discovered, Mike, that was really crazy. When people started hitting these, and I talk about it in the documentary, where they're hitting these high states of gamma, like 3 standard deviations outside of normal when you're measuring anything is 2% of the population. And that's very, very good. We're getting high gamma, coherent, high gamma brainwave patterns, 200, 300, 400 standard deviations outside of normal. 3 is an outlier. So you imagine 197 more, 297 more of those little boxes. This is a person who's having a supernatural amount of order in their autonomic nervous system. So if stress is autonomic dysregulation, then the person who's functioning in that coherent, highly regulated, very intense gamma brainwave state that's producing some kind of ecstasy or bliss, that's an enormous amount of autonomic regulation. And when people hit that moment, somehow there's an immediate biological upgrade in their body. There's the condition, and now it's gone, because the autonomic nervous system is controlling and coordinating every other system in the body, right? So now the information that's traveling to the cell, to the tissue, to the organ, to the system, is very, very coherent, is very clear, and the frequency is very fast. A person somehow gets this kind of upgrade. Now that's where we've gotten, that's like the instantaneous stuff where I'm shaking my head and going, muscular dystrophy? I mean, come on, there's no cure for muscular dystrophy. The kid came in a wheelchair and he's walking out of the event. I'm scratching my head, how did that happen? He had that moment of arousal, but the arousal was an enormous amount of gamma, and it wasn't happening in his thinking neocortex. It was happening in the limbic brain, the seat of the autonomic nervous system, on fire. And that's regulating enormous amounts of order, right?
It's
crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I can't believe it. I keep telling the scientists, I can't believe this stuff. And you should see the scientists, because these are, guys that have published 200, 300 papers. They're very empirical. Now we're working with Harvard scientists and some Stanford people too, and they see the data. The first thing they fall out of their chair with is 7 days. Like a drug trial is, 3 months, 6 months. They're like, what? 7 days, and it's not like 10% of the population. It's 80%, it's 70%.
Of your population.
Yeah, the community.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of insane. They're like, what? No drug trial does that. Best drug trial is 25%, 1 out of 4. This is like 3 out of 4. Like, and I keep saying to the scientists, where are those chemicals coming from? Where are they coming from? Where are they coming from? The person's not ingesting anything. They're not changing their diet. How can a person's microbiome in 7 days be completely different? Completely different. At least 15 probiotic, really powerful, in large communities, changes in microbiome. The only answer is they're not the same person. If they were the same person, they'd have the same microbiome, right?
Yeah.
If a different person, completely different microbiome.
Do you think that it's something unique and special that's happening in your methodology? Or, so John Kabat-Zinn is a mentor friend of mine, beautiful human being. And he's got a 3 and a 5 day meditation that I'll go to. And so it's 3 days of, call it, 16 hours of noble silence meditation. And do you think it happens there? And this is not about John and about Joe. This is about the practice of meditation, mindfulness over an extended period of time.
I think that any methodology can work as long as the person understands what they're doing and why they're doing it. I think that's important. And there's elements of mindfulness in the work that we do, but there's the scientists call it WTF-fulness. Like what is that? Like what is that? And I honestly believe that when you get in that right brain state, like theta, you're suggestible to information, you're in a hypnotic state, right? And suggestibility is your ability to accept information, believe information, surrender to it without analyzing it, and somehow it programs the subconscious or affects the autonomic nervous system. But if your eyes are closed and you're in a meditation and the music's filling the space and you're not seeing anything, you're not hearing ambient sounds, you're not tasting, you're not smelling, you're not feeling anything with your physical body, but you're still suggestible to information, there's only one other place you can get information from, that's frequency, right? So get the nervous system tuned up to order, and there's an invisible field of energy that exists beyond our senses that we are immersed in, that somehow the brain can transduce that frequency into information in our biology, because 25 hours of focusing a lot of times on a good portion of that on nothing physical and material, somehow there's effects, dramatic effects in people's biology, to the extent that at the end of 7 days, their biology looks like they're living in a whole new life. It looks like they're living in a whole new environment, and they're in a ballroom, and there's really nothing really spectacular in a ballroom. I've been to thousands of them. They all look the same.
When you have a 1 week post-trial, 3 week, 6 week post-trial, and you measure, check in whatever ways, what are you finding happens post?
Okay, I'll tell you what we know so far. HRV levels after the 7-day event continue to improve for 2 to 3 weeks. In other words, we do these healings on each other, and you got to get into this super altered state. And we see the heart go completely out of order. Like there's an arousal that's insane, and you see it in the collective. That experience produces an emotion of love and joy that tends to linger for weeks, if not months after the event. The person's just feeling a whole different feeling. We see brain coherence sustained. We see certain people, not all of them, their microbiome stays changed. We see some people regress because they stop doing the work. And they return back to their environment, and their environment is controlling how they're feeling and controlling how they're thinking and controlling how they're acting, and they return back to the same personality. And so you see this kind of encroachment slowly over time of disease starting to reoccur. But I think really one of the cool things that I'm proud about with our community is that people do the work. And I don't think they do it because they have to. I think they do it because there's magic happening in their life with opportunities and synchronicities and coincidences, and that inspires them to want to keep the magic going. So, we've seen great changes, and we've seen the people who have those high gamma moments where there's the Parkinson's and now it's gone. Those tend to be very permanent. Like, we very rarely see there's a regression of the condition. And we have a language expert, that at the University of Central Oklahoma. He's really studies the language of transformation, and he started off studying I think it was 26 or 28 case histories of people that tell their testimonial, their story of transformation. And he's got a huge AI system, and we were picking apart the language of transformation so that I can actually teach it better. And I know the words then that I could use to help people get there easier. And one of the main things that happens in people who really fully immerse themselves is that the word "I felt it" or "feel it" is the most common word, and it breaks down into two venues. One is it's very somatic. I don't know what that was. My heart blew open, the top of my head blew off. There was lightning bolts coming out of my hand. I could feel every atom in my body vibrating to a certain level of order. It's very somatic. What the hell? Only for the simple reason that I want the synchronicity. I want the weird. Opportunity. I want the unusual thing that caused me to go, huh. And the other component, Mike, is it's very emotional. I never felt love like that before. I never felt anything. I don't even have the word to describe it. But as a consequence of that experience, there's a temporality. I'm not that person any longer. That's not me. That used to be. That's a different person. I'm somebody else, right? And so those high arousals where the person moves into those states, there's an upgrade that takes biologically that's sustained for a good period of time.
What does your practice look like?
So I'm a morning person. I've always been a morning person. I have a lot of things that I have to do in one day. My belief is that if I can get myself right, if I can overcome myself at the beginning of the day, everybody else is easy. So I allow for 2 hours every morning. Doesn't mean I necessarily take 2 hours, but I like the morning where everybody's asleep. I'm early riser. I get in my think box. It's really important. I pace, I move around, I get, okay, I think about the obvious things. Okay, I look at my calendar, I get all that taken care of. Okay, this, that, the other thing, I get all that worked out. And then it is really me sitting down and doing the work. My goal is to be the example, really, of everything that I teach. So I have to lead by example. And I think experience is the greatest professor. So I'm gonna step into. We interface with the world. I have lots of Zoom calls, lots of meetings, lots of things to learn. But really, my morning practice is getting myself ready for my day. How am I going to face unexpected things? And how long am I going to emotionally react for if I react? I mean, it's not that you react. The question is, how long are you going to keep that going, right?
Got it.
Yeah. So then there's things I'm working on with myself, that I always want to unlearn and relearn,
Is this more, are you using a meditative practice or writing practice?
No. The morning, the first part, the think box of just looking at my day is that's the knowns.
That's analytical, if you will.
That's the knowns. That's just, okay. I can go through that very quickly. Then I'll say, okay, when I get done, I'm going to have to read this stuff just to get ready.
Yep.
Or someone's going to brief me on it, and I'll get ready.
Okay.
But then there's Joe Dispenza on the journey, right? How do I want to be? One day, one lifetime.
Yeah.
Let me just see if I can embody this person. Let me see if I can keep my energy up. Let me see if I can stay in my heart. Let me see if I can really be present and considerate and kind. And then the rest of the day I'm serving. The rest of the day I'm busy, and my ambition is to be able to maintain that modified state of mind and body my entire day. Only for the simple reason that I want the synchronicity. I want the weird opportunity. I want the unusual thing that caused me to go, did I really create that? Am I somehow in the creative process here? Instead of being the victim of my life, that person, that circumstance is actually controlling my feelings and thoughts and ultimately my behaviors. That's a program, right? So I want to switch from that mode into being the creator. So I got to get in the state where I can create. And that means sometimes it takes me a little bit longer. And sometimes it takes me like almost an hour to get beyond myself, but I'm not going to get up until I'm that person. And I don't care if I run over. It's just, in the light of all eternity, that's worth it to me, right? So,
Very cool.
So I allow for those 2 hours, sometimes the whole entire 2 hours I'm inward. And other times I've fallen into the fold, and it's like you said, you're there, and you just want to elongate the moment. And you don't do anything except, I always say, memorize this feeling. Dude, memorize this feeling. Memorize it. Bring it up. Keep remembering this feeling. This is who you are, right? So when I open my eyes, and I do that, my day's differently than when I don't. And I like the synchronicities. I like the unknown experiences because it proves to me that I am the creator of my life. At the end of my day, it's always the same question. How'd you do, dude? Like, how did you do today? Like, when'd you fall from grace? What person, what circumstance? When did you lose it? When did you go unconscious? Then, of course, the next question is, new day, tomorrow. How are you going to think different? How are you going to behave differently in that same circumstance? Another shot at it, Joe Dispenza. What would you do? And if I don't know the answer, I'm going to look it up and find out what would somebody somewhere sometime must have faced this. How did they do it? So let me just learn that, and then let me integrate that into my evolution, right? Because what I want to do is I just want to make steady strides in my own evolution. And sometimes I work on things for months, but I know I know that when I change, my life changes. I mean, I know that. And nothing changes in our life until we change, right? So again, if I could work with it, if it takes me 2 months to get there, it's always worth the effort. So
what challenges you the most?
my biggest challenge is time. I do a lot of things, and I think it's a commodity. But if I'm in the present moment and I'm not thinking about time, somehow it magically works. So I work a lot on that.
What is your great anxiety?
Am I doing enough?
Yeah.
Yeah, not like in an obsessive way. But one thing that really works well for me, and I'm totally happy with this, is that I just need time alone. And I think that helps me the most.
A couple quick hits.
Yeah.
I am. How do you finish that thought?
Joyful right now.
Relationships are.
Most important thing we have.
My philosophy is.
Live life to its fullest, and that we're the creator of our life.
If you could sit with one master, somebody that's a true master of self or craft, who would it be? And if you only had one question, what would you ask?
Well, I would choose somebody that was enlightened. And then I would ask him, what's my blind spot? That's all I'd want to know.
Mastery is?
I think when you know that you know how to do something, and you can shorten the distance between the thought of what you want and the experience of having it.
That's really cool.
That's my best shot.
That is really cool.
Speaking from my present state of ignorance.
My working philosophy is every day is an opportunity to create a living masterpiece. And each one of those words matters. Opportunity, create a masterpiece. And so when you think about a living masterpiece, what comes to mind for you?
I really like studying people who have near-death experiences. It's just really fascinating to me because when they come back, their brain's completely different, for sure, and their worldview is different. There's nothing greater than being a part of a human being's transformation. There's nothing greater when you can celebrate someone's personal change and transformation. And I think the greatest form of gratitude that we can ever experience is when we receive gratitude from someone else. I think there's an empathy that's innate in us that we kind of go, we feel what that person's feeling when their life has changed, right? Or they're appreciative. And I think our social networks switch on. I think we come together, we commune, we connect more. And I think there's a greater appreciation for life. And so mission-driven people are people who really want to make a difference in people's lives. And I think it's the highest form of motivation. And I think people, we see this in our work all the time. Like, people come for wealth, they come for health, they come for relationships, they come for a mystical experience. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to me. That's just one experience. Like the people who actually heal themselves, they're not victimized by their disease. That they tell me I would have never changed. Would have never changed unless I had this disease, right? And so then, but what people ultimately come for after they arrive at whatever it is they arrive at is wholeness. They just want wholeness. I mean, imagine being so whole you no longer want. How could you want when you're whole?
Yeah.
And somehow, the self-reported questionnaires that we do around that there's a direct correlation with the heart and the brain, coherence in the heart and the brain, that synchronization that takes place, and that kind of explanation, like I don't want anything. And I think when we're in that state, everybody's okay.
It's amazing. Cardiac disease is one of the big killers. And for folks that are listening that are struggling with cardiac disease and they've got maybe blockage, they've got a calcification, they've got something going on, would you suggest, because you've talked about the heart a lot, would you suggest a daily meditation practice? If they're not yours, figure it out. Would you suggest a healing imagery where they see the decalcification taking place?
Yeah, I think it's more than that, though. I mean, I think there's 3 types of stress: physical, chemical, and emotional.
Okay.
I think there's 3 types of balance: physical, chemical, and emotional. I work really hard in my life to be physically balanced, chemically balanced, and emotionally balanced. The hard one out of the 3, because 75 to 90% of every person that walks into a health care facility walks in because of psychological and emotional stress. So you could be visualizing all you want, seeing your arteries clear. You could be an emotional basket case, and it's not going to work because the heart in survival and stress is out of balance, right? So there's got to be the right. I believe there's got to be a right state that you have to be in to be able to have the visual process be the most effective. Because otherwise, it's trying, it's forcing, it's wishing, it's hoping, it's fighting, it's competing. That's lack. That's like, we cannot attract anything in our life that we feel separate from. So in order for the person to heal their heart has to be open. Their heart has to be activated. That center's got to be awakened. Then the greatest effects that you can see, and we've seen this with people, the greatest effects takes place beyond our comprehension of how that little protrusion disappeared. How did it disappear? It's none of your business. The autonomic nervous system can manufacture chemistry. Like, that's insane. We've proven it. So, it's none of your business. All you have to do is, when it happens and how it happens is none of our business, but we got to be in the right state, right? Getting people in the right state is the challenge. Then the rehearsal, the positive imagery, all that stuff has the greatest outcome. But that works better in children, we discovered, than in adults. What works better in adults is for them to change. If I change, my heart should change. If I change, my life should change. And people say, I don't know, 80% of the tumors went away. I wasn't doing anything. I was just doing my meditations. Well, of course, you're in homeostasis. and your body's back in balance because stress is the lack of homeostasis. Some people's goals when they have a diagnosis is not like I'm going to heal. Their goal is like, I've been out of homeostasis for the last 10 years. My job is to get back into homeostasis. If I get back into homeostasis, there's a better shot of me healing. Now, then with that comes a lot of challenges. Like I said, it's not that you react.
Yeah,
It's how long you react.
you are more of a bottom-up approach versus a top-down.
Yeah.
Right? Create the conditions, create the physiological experience. And one of the conditions is the neurochemistry that happens between people, the community. So you're more of a bottoms up, but you're not absent of a top down.
Because a person could say, I'm healthy, I'm wealthy, I'm free, I'm unlimited. And their body's programmed, and their body's saying, no, you're not, you're miserable, dude. Like,
Yeah,
that thought never passes the brainstem. So
That affirmation thing is kind of...
Yeah, but get a
it's
person in the
flimsy.
right state where they're feeling grateful. Oh, we accept, believe, and surrender to thoughts equal to our emotional state. So the bottom up is important. The top down is the application, is the technique, right?
Yeah,
But
that's
you got to
correct.
set up the conditions, and I think I've done everything wrong. I've made all the wrong turns. Like I'll try this, I'll try that,
Yeah.
and so I don't do any type of meditation that's traditional. I just look at the data.
Yeah, that's really cool. My vision is...
To make a difference in the world, to change people in order to change the world.